Having just completed the spirited and joyous performance of the September monthly service, together with all of you present here today, I am certain that God the Parent and Noya-sama are looking upon us with joy. As I have been appointed to deliver this month's sermon, I would like to ask for your kind attention. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. This is my first time giving a sermon here. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and I was raised up here at Dendocho, as were my mother's family, and the members of my mother's family are here as well, and I'm actually very nervous to speak in front of my family as well. But it is quite an honor. And I went to college in Los Angeles, and then I moved to New York for graduate school. And ever since, I've lived in New York for the past 20 years. So basically, half of my life has been in Los Angeles, and the other half has been in New York. It's pretty much right at the halfway point. Initially, for 15 years, I worked at our cultural institute, Tenrikyo Cultural Institute, located in Manhattan. And that was about 15 years, and then I was appointed as the 6th minister of Tenrikyo Mission New York Center 4 years ago. As many of you know, my grandfather was the 3rd bishop of Mission Headquarters in America. Before he became bishop, he was initially sent as a secretary in 1936. That was right at the very beginning of everything. Dendocho was established right before that on Cummings Street. I'm sorry, that was not in the script. Sorry. Then after the attack on Pearl Harbor during World War II, all people of Japanese ancestry on the West Coast were sent to relocation camps. And since Japanese church leaders were the first ones to go, they were sent, actually the leaders were sent to special FBI camps, and my grandfather was separated from his young family. At that time, they had 2 young children, my mother and my uncle Hajime, who is here today. I heard that the church ministers who had to give up their properties, they actually had to close their churches. So they took the objects of worship in their shrines and brought them to Dendocho. And I actually have heard that they actually stored the omedo-san, or the objects of worship, under this jodan that we have today, under the stage here. They had to keep them here at Mission Headquarters for safekeeping. And it was my grandmother who had to take charge of things at Mission Headquarters until she also had to leave with her children to the relocation camps as well. And it was a local African-American Christian church that had agreed to take charge, or to watch over the Mission Headquarters property at that time. Once the war ended and the families came back, this Christian church returned the property to us, thankfully. And all the church, but unfortunately there was no place for the church families to live and work. So apparently all the pews in this sanctuary were put onto the Jodan stage for storage. And approximately 81 people lived in the sanctuary and on the church property during this period because there was no place to live. And some lived here for a short period of time and some for about a year. But after that year, they were able to reestablish themselves, and they were able. And after about a year, we were able to restore this sanctuary and to conduct services here at that time. This is when my grandfather became the third bishop after the second bishop was deported to Japan, since he had been an officer in the Japanese Imperial Army in his younger years. After my grandfather ended his term as the bishop, he spent about 9 years in New York in an effort to establish a mission post there. He was then appointed as the Bishop of Mission Headquarters of Hawaii, where he served for 10 years. There are no other bishops who have served in this manner. One day, I asked my grandparents what it was like to live in 3 different cities in the United States, in Los Angeles, in New York, and in Hawaii. And they told us various stories about their lives. But when they started talking about New York, their eyes lit up and they began to smile. From that point on, I myself had an urgent desire to visit New York and check out the city that they were so excited about. Somehow I feel that I was destined to go there to tend to the seeds that my grandparents had sown years ago. I really never heard that much about my grandparents' life in New York. But I heard that they went without financial support from church headquarters. At first, my grandfather went by himself and left my grandmother and their 7 children here in Los Angeles. My grandfather spoke very little English, but in order to establish Tenrikyo in New York and support his family, he worked as a travel agent while he continued his missionary work. He lived all the way uptown in Manhattan, near the Bronx, in a not-so-nice area, in a very small apartment, and he went from being a prominent church leader to becoming a humble pioneer of the path in an unknown territory. The Tenrikyo followers who lived in the New York area gathered at his apartment to perform the service, and this is the precursor to New York Center. Once I finally had the opportunity to visit New York, I immediately understood what my grandparents were talking about. I was amazed with the powerful energy and excitement that emanated from the tons of people from all parts of the world struggling to survive and to succeed. And thanks to God the Parent's blessings, I was able to go to school in New York and eventually appointed to work for Tenri Cultural Institute. Up until that point, I was always quite active in Tenrikyo, but I lacked basic fundamental belief in God. And part of it was because everything in my life, including my health and my family, had gone quite smoothly up until that point. I had gone through college and taught English at Oyasato High School in Tenri. I went to graduate school and got married and had a daughter, all within a 10-year period. I really kind of took everything for granted. However, it was at this point in my life that I feel God put me through a test to prepare me for my mission in New York. In Tenrikyo, we are taught that if there is a problem with illness, with a child under the age of 15, we're taught that this is guidance for the parents. Thanks to our first daughter, Julia, we were recipients of a good deal of guidance. Starting at birth, Julia had various health issues before the age of 1, and she was hospitalized a total of 4 times for different problems that would completely disappear mysteriously during each hospitalization. This is the point where my wife starts to get emotional. The last time she was hospitalized was due to an infection in her kidneys. The doctors told us that there was a high probability that due to the malformation of the tubes that lead to her kidneys, that she would have kidney problems for the rest of her life. This was probably the lowest point of our lives. And since Julia was so young, my wife had to stay with her in the hospital, and that was for weeks on end. And I would visit the hospital as often as possible after work, and I would pray at the main sanctuary on the way home. I spent many hours doing kairofuki, or wiping the corridors of the main sanctuary in the moonlight. Then one day, my wife's superior brought Reverend Tadamasa Fukaya, the current bishop's father, to administer the sasuke for Julia. And after the sasuke, Reverend Fukaya, who is widely known for his experience with salvation, said that she would be fine. Then a week later, the test results came back, showing no signs of any kidney problems. We were really overjoyed with this news, thank God the parent, and vowed to do our best in New York. Now, 20 years later, Julia is very healthy and doing very well in college as a third-year nursing student. We are blessed with 2 younger daughters also who are doing well, and all 3 stay connected to the church and friends of the path. In the anecdotes of Oya-sama, story number 90, Oya-sama stated the following: God says, showing causality to parents, God waits for children to appear. Do you understand? Therefore, virtue is more deeply planted in the second generation than in the first one, and deeper still in the third than in the second. By becoming ever deeper, it will become virtue which lasts forever. It depends on the mind of a man whether it lasts for 1 generation only, or for 2 or 3 generations, or forever. By the continuation of this virtue, even a bad causality becomes a good one. Through our experience with our daughter, it feels as if a great misfortune was reduced to a small misfortune, and a small misfortune was no misfortune at all. By hearing about the stories of our predecessors, I'm certain that we are benefiting from their great dedication and efforts on the path. I am grateful for all the many blessings our family have received, and I hope to continue this effort by passing down the joy of faith to future generations. Once we arrived in New York, my first task was to establish Tenrikyo Cultural Institute in the community. This year actually marks the 25th anniversary of TCI. Over the years, we have welcomed thousands of students, and we have hundreds of concerts and art exhibitions. Whether the person is a student, a parent, an artist, a musician, or a tourist, there's no denying the universal appeal of our space. It's quite nice, beautiful space in the middle of New York City. It's up to us staff to show kindness to the people who come in and to show them how we practice Oya-sama's teachings. In New York, I meet many people who say that they are not interested in religion, but they look at our staff and our followers and our children and comment on what a wonderful community of nice people we have. The former New York Center minister, Reverend Okui, used to say that it was up to us to show people our sokonashi shinsetsu, which is kindness, which shows no bounds. And it is thanks to this kindness, which you rarely find in New York, that people come back. And thankfully, TCI has become a established community center. As a Japanese school, we no longer need to advertise because our classes are well attended. And nowadays, people either hear by word of mouth or simply find us on the internet and come in. If you look up Japanese language, New York City, on Google, we would be the first hit that you would get. More recently, the TCI staff made a resolution for the 130th anniversary to have 130 students. It was kind of a crazy resolution. Up until then, maybe the most students we had was 80 or 90 students. But as of January of this year, we were able to reach this goal of 130 students. And we also have 160 students studying in our children's classes. And with these wonderful results, we are officially, or the Cultural Institute is officially financially independent. It was actually a dream of ours that we had for 25 years, and it actually has come true. And we have more and more students and patrons of TCI who come to New York Center and the services and have become active yoboku. And it's thanks to everyone's support that we have been able to come to this point. In addition, we are incredibly grateful to have a new sanctuary at New York Center. It was built 8 years ago now. And this building, with its modern design and peaceful landscape, often give people a great sense of comfort and tranquility. And I feel this is the ultimate gift from God the Parent and Oya-sama, as well as our architects and our contractors and our supporters. And I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude to people such as the late Reverend Jiro Morishita, the late Mr. Tokiyuki Yokoi, and the late Reverend Takeo Uesugi, who sacrificed so much that this dream sanctuary could be realized. I'm sorry, this is the point where I get a little emotional. I've been wanting to thank these members for a long time. I hope to one day tell my grandchildren about how Reverend Jiro spent about 1.5 years to design and build the shrines, the kandoko housing, the chairs, and the hasoku stands in Los Angeles. And then he shipped it all to New York to put it all together. And it was Reverend Tokiyuki Yokoi who connected our PA system and translation receivers at the risk of his own life. He was undergoing kidney dialysis treatment every other day. So coming from Los Angeles to install this equipment was very risky. And Reverend Uesugi designed the landscape for the building, which creates a truly inviting and natural atmosphere for the community. All three of these incredibly dedicated and generous individuals passed away not long after their task on this job were finished, after we opened our new sanctuary. And their greatest hopes were that the younger generation would utilize this sanctuary to its full potential. In April of this year, I had the fortunate opportunity to visit Brazil for the first time. I went to observe the programs held at Mission Headquarters in Brazil, especially in regards to the youth. Currently, we're doing a big drive to nurture the youth of our congregation. There, I witnessed the joyous Boys and Girls Association convention, or it was actually a service practice which was held with literally hundreds of members crowding the sanctuary to perform on the Jodan stage. They had so many children, they had to perform in 2 rows of instruments and 2 rows of dancers. And after the service, they all got into their their drum and 5-corps uniforms. And then they offered a special performance, or Osonai Enso, in front of the sanctuary, as they would in Jiba. It was really just like you would find in the Jiba. I would imagine there was about 1,000 people there. And it was really an incredible gathering of 7 different bands practicing in 7 different districts and traveling as far as 8 hours away by charter bus to perform. They closed off the street in the front. They named the street Tenri Street, and they held an on-parade competition with a panel of judges. And then at night, they had an awards ceremony to announce the results of these performances. Most of the bands received silver and gold medals, and each time there was an announcement, they screamed cheers of joy and excitement and cried out at the results. It was just incredibly inspiring. Then I heard about their student programs. 10 years ago, they started a project to create a TSA 5-day course. It started off with a small gathering of teenagers who were mostly church members from the ages of 15 to 20. It was a small gathering, and the program was specifically designed for Brazilian youth, utilizing many of the HARP interactive concepts developed in Jiba. Over the years, the program has grown, and now they have 250 students participating, and 40% of the participants are newcomers to the faith. So it's due to this increase of young people. They have noticed the attendance to their spiritual development course, as well as the participation to the Young Men's Association and Young Women's Group has also increased dramatically. After seeing the effectiveness, after seeing the joyousness of the youth in Brazil, I was able to see firsthand this effectiveness of placing greater emphasis on nurturing the young members. At church headquarters, it has been emphasized that now is a seasonable time to nurture human resources that will carry the path to the future. This year actually marks the 50th anniversary of the Boys and Girls Association. Next year, they are planning to have a seminar for successors in 25 sessions. And in 2 years' time, the Young Men's Association will be celebrating its 100th anniversary. So it really does seem like a special time, a seasonable time to make even greater efforts to nurture our youth. I hope we can all take the tasks of nurturing human resources as our own concerns. Next year, at New York Center, we will be celebrating our 40th anniversary. Apparently, the New York Center project was a 40-year anniversary. It was one of the projects for the 40th year anniversary of Mission Headquarters. So 40 years have passed. One of the key players at that time was Reverend Yoshikazu Terada, who was the chairman of the Young Men's Association of America and also the secretary here at Mission Headquarters. When he visited New York, he was so inspired by the big city. He came back, and with the other committee members of the Young Men's Association, they opened their wallets, they threw all their money in their wallets into the donation box. And they performed a prayer service to establish a mission post in New York. And that was 1969, the year that I was born. Thinking about the future of our growing congregation, we also have started a building fund in New York. As of now, we're growing and we barely have enough space to accommodate visitors to our monthly service and our various programs. This is especially true of our 3-day course and our Boys and Girls Association sleepovers. We often have about 90 children and adults participating in our sleepovers, and we're running out of places to sleep. Members also have a hard time finding parking at our church location on service days. And this is a wonderful problem to have because it's an indication that our congregation is growing and continues to grow. You may have seen some of our 40th anniversary t-shirts that we have on sale with the Chinese characters for gratitude on the back. We hope to keep the spirit of gratitude in our minds and hope that we can continue to contribute our efforts to plan for the future generations. In the Osashizu, it states, from the point of view of the ordinary people of the world, gatherings of young people often mean trouble, yet they do not mean trouble for the path. Rather, they are full of importance from the path's point of view. If you take good care of young people, treating them as even more important than your own children, then there is no telling what great things that they will do in the world. I don't know if my grandfather would have ever imagined that the seeds that he planted, would have grown and blossomed into the wonderful flowers that we see today. And I never thought that I would ever become the minister of New York Center. But somehow, it really does seem that it was God's plan all along. I cannot help feel that we are entering a new beginning in this seasonable time after the 130th anniversary of Oyasama. I think God is urging us to renew our faith and our energy as we increase our efforts to nurture our youth on the path so that they can carry the path forward for many years to come. I hope to work together with everyone here, united in mind, as we proceed on the path of the joyous life during this special time. Thank you very much.